In this segment, Manisha joins us to answer some viewer questions. All right, Manisha, thanks for sticking around. You ready?
Always ready for you, Tanya.
Great. The first question comes from V. She sends her question in via Twitter. She asks, what's the best point in a relationship to merge finances? Very good question from V.
It is, and V, you know, that's a lot like asking when is the right time in a relationship to merge bodies, if I were to put it in a PG way. There's not necessarily a right and wrong way. I personally believe when it comes to finances, I'm very conservative, that you should wait to merge until you're married. But sometimes life gets in the way. You find a perfect house, a perfect piece of property that you may want to buy together before you walk down the aisle. If that's the case, my advice is make it legal, draw up documents with a lawyer to decide what's going to happen if you end up splitting up. Sort of the financial version of hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Absolutely great advice. Now, here's a question from Celise. How do you decide as a couple what an appropriate emergency fund is and who should contribute what percent if the incomes aren't equal? Now, I'm not sure if she's talking about a married couple or an unmarried couple, because that would differ a little bit, wouldn't it?
It would. Let me make the assumption she's talking about a married couple here, because I'm getting this question a lot. Personal finance experts say anywhere from 3 to 9 months. I would say 3 is the bare minimum if you both have super secure jobs, like you work for the government. Otherwise, I suggest closer to 6, maybe even as much as 9. And if you have disproportionate incomes, to contribute proportionally. So as a mouthful, if your household income is $100,000, one of you makes $70,000, the other makes $30,000. The one that makes 70 contributes 70% to the fund, and the other one contributes 30% to the fund. That I found is the most equitable way to handle that situation.
That sounds absolutely fair. All right, Abigail tweets in her question asking, how do you bring up a bad credit history without scaring off your boyfriend? That's a tough one.
You know, it is, and I have to say, honestly, the best example of how to handle a tough conversation, I think, is how David Letterman handled his recent transgressions. It was brilliant. He was just straight up. And that's what I advise any woman or man who has some tough news to deliver to their significant other, but not only just to give the information straight up, but explain the game plan. What steps are you taking to improve that credit score right now?
Because no one's going to fault you for having a bad credit history if you're taking the appropriate steps to rectify it. I mean, at least no one that you have a romantic relationship with, we'd hope.
Exactly. And you know, as America, we love a comeback.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely. We're always reinventing ourselves, correct?
That's
all right. Now, Paul sends his question in via Facebook asking, how can you track your spending as a couple without making the other person feel like they have no privacy? It's interesting. This question sort of reminds me of what you were saying earlier, that opposites attract. It sounds like one person here really wants to know where every last dollar is going, and the other one maybe not so much.
I am getting this question so frequently, and it's often coming up in the context of a household where somebody's been laid off, and the spouse that has not been laid off wants to make extra sure what's happening with the finances, but doesn't want to insult the spouse that has just been laid off as if they're being micromanaged. So my suggestion is this: if you don't like budgeting, do big aggregates. At the end of each month, add up how much you've spent in aggregate on credit cards, on debit cards, on checks and automated direct withdrawals from your bank account, and cash withdrawals. Add up those 4 buckets of outflows and compare them to your inflows. And if you are spending more than you're bringing in, then you can have a more detailed conversation.
And break it down. Yeah, that is very touchy, especially when you said if one person in the relationship has gotten laid off. All right, our last question comes from Cate, and she asks, when one partner is handling the majority of the finances, what is the best way to keep the other person up to speed on what's going on with the money? That's also a very good question.
It is, and what I've noticed is we're all so darn busy these days that that's become the norm in most households. You have to divide and conquer to get it all done. So I suggest that at least once a year, you and your mate sit down and you discuss what you guys own and owe in your household, what you're earning and you're spending in your household, and how your money, your savings is invested, and how those investments have done. So you're having this annual summit. I also suggest, so that you don't go off the ranch, either one of you, in between, that you set a dollar amount that you each can spend each month, no questions asked, and a dollar amount above which you both agree to consult each other before spending.
That's interesting. So even if you make your own money, let's say, you still suggest you set a limit to what you can spend without asking the other partner about.
On joint funds. So if you do the financial three-way for joint funds, I suggest your own money, it's yours to do with as you wish. But anything that you're considering in your household joint money, consult each other.
All right, Manisha, thank you so much for taking the time to answer our questions. And if you have a financial problem you need answered, remember, go to our website at abcnews.com/business to ask our team of personal finance experts your questions. We'll do our very best to answer them right here on Good Money.
ABC News Now. Good to know.